I watched Sinners last night, which is...
Did you like it? Did you get too scared?
It was fun to watch. I hadn't realized it was like a Dracula vampire movie.
Yeah, that's what they call those movies, Dracula movies. Did a lot of
Lots
Draculas
of Draculas.
attack him. You were going to introduce the show, Brian, weren't you?
I am, yes.
And us, thank you.
Welcome to People vs. Algorithms, the show about detecting patterns in media, technology, and culture. I am Brian Morrissey, and joined, as always, by Troy Young. And back again is Alex Schleifer. It's been a few weeks.
Yeah, there wasn't a ton of popular demand. I think you guys have been doing great with that. Was there?
There was. AB, though, is now getting, the love has shifted from a little bit, just a little bit. But
Anonymous banker. Well, he knows what he's talking about, which seems to be something people resonate with.
We should try that.
He sent me a note after the last one, which I thought was really cute, saying basically what they did and saying that they were open for criticism of their performance on the podcast.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
High agency and open.
Still waiting for that note from you, Alex.
Yeah, no, I'm not open. I do this for free. You get what you get. No refunds, no feedback. And of course I want feedback.
AB gets the start quick too.
Yeah.
Yeah, top marks all around. So we've got a great show today. We're going to be talking about AI, what else? But how it is impacting the ad world. We're going to talk about it destroying writing and how we teach children and maybe ourselves. And I want to get into this Cloudflare plan to tax the bots. I didn't see you at the party, Troy. I thought you would be at the party. There was a countdown clock party at the World Trade Center, World Trade Center 1.
You know, I'm avoiding New York City if I can. I'm kind of out of New York City for the summertime.
Anyway, I was there. There was a little red button that got pushed. We can talk about it later in the episode. I want to talk about a couple quick things to start things off. We didn't really get too deep into the Zohran Mamdani phenomenon last week, but then I don't know if you guys have this, but I listened to a Ezra Klein podcast and he had on Chris Hayes and he took the exact angle that we should have taken. And it was about the communication strategy of Zohran Mamdani. And the thesis was basically that as Trump is just a natural animal, a natural species of Twitter, that Zohran Mamdani is just a natural for vertical video. I personally think that he is a master communicator, and I think that he has more similarities actually in that than with Trump than people realize, and that people only see the bombastic part of Trump, but everyone who I've ever talked to who has met the guy and everything I've heard about him is that he's a master listener. And I think a lot of his success was you can disagree with actually what came out of it, but that he was listening in a way to a lot of grievances in a way that the Republican Party and the Republican Party establishment simply was not. And I think Zohran Mamdani is literally listening. He was listening to the people who can't afford like regular life anymore in New York City. Anyone who's been to New York City knows that the prices of everything in New York City have become gothic. The affordability of that place is it's shocking to me sometimes. And he seized on that, but he has become a master content creator. Troy, do you want to kick us off? How do you see the Mamdani phenomenon? Leave aside the fact that he's going to be rounding up people like you in Central Park.
No, my wife's a big fan, as are many of her friends.
Does she know?
But her politics,
has she read through the full program?
It doesn't matter to her. It's just vibes.
Okay, good.
She likes the vibes.
Well, also the full program isn't that bad. I mean,
I know. Well, okay.
I think there's a lot of like rich people are going to leave New York because they have to pay a little bit more. Meanwhile, people can't afford groceries or a bus fare. Like, come on.
I think that maybe is a simplification.
I don't know.
And people might not be able to afford bus fare when there's no jobs.
Because all the rich people left?
All the rich people are certainly not going to be building buildings, when, there's no incentive to do it. So it's much more complicated than
all right, but let's talk about the communications part, and we can weave in.
See, he said that he already baited. He baited me already, Brian, because he said in the group chat that he was a supporter.
He's a compound liberal. It used to be limousine liberals, but that doesn't like.
Yeah, I think you look at politicians and in an old-fashioned way, you think, well, do I like their platform? Are they competent, executors and bureaucrats? And, can I trust that this person's going to kind of advance the program that I voted for? And I think that the modern condition is like, that's all secondary to your ability to sort of embody, to be a kind of modern communicator. And the type, because there's, a lot of people aren't very good at sort of creating and manufacturing attention in a kind of networked world. It's a real skill. So, there is a great, I don't know where the line came from, but it said rather than earning contributions, he earned attention, right? Like it was like raising money versus raising attention was the kind of idea.
Well, he raised like a fraction of what Andrew Cuomo did. This is more evidence. Trump proved it again that paid advertising is not working the way it used to be.
Well, what I was thinking is like I heard a bunch of the sort of Como attack ads today that were on another podcast that I was listening to. I never heard one of them. So remember, it's an election happening in June and it's a local election in New York City. I literally never heard one of them. Apparently, if you listen to radio or you watch local television, you would have, like, they spent big and you would have heard it, dozens of times. So what I did hear is I heard about the Zohran gatherings. I saw the Zohran kind of viral posts on TikTok and stuff. So it really, to me, particularly where there's kind of no tentpole events like there is in a federal election, or the kind of, aggregate energy of all media focused on that. If you weren't paying attention locally, you wouldn't have heard any of Como's ads. And they were sort of straight down the middle attack ads against Zohran's policies. So, and then the amazing one that I think you were highlighting, Brian, was when he did one of these sort of first-person video things and was stopping people in Queens or something. And rather than sort of, confront them and tell people who he was and what his stance was, he just had them talk and he listened to them. And then he said, I get where you're coming from. Affordability is an issue. I'm Zohran. I'm running for mayor. I'd like to fix that for you. And so it was kind of the inverse of what people typically do, which is tell people what their position is and wait for their feedback. It was listen to what they're talking about and then respond at the very end. And it just felt real and it felt modern and it felt like it belonged inside of how we communicate now. And plus, he has all this sort of memetic stuff like freeze the rent, free buses, public groceries. Even if public groceries is the most grocery stores, right? Like city-owned grocery is the most ludicrous idea you've ever heard in your life. At least you talk about it.
Pilot program. It's a pilot program.
You talk about it. It's like you turn the city into
one per borough. But
it's like the Park Slope Food Co-op. But
are you a member?
I have been.
I would pay extra if you could then walk with me with my groceries down the block.
No, it's not happening. My family likes my son and my wife really like the food there. It's good. The cheese is good. The meat's good.
But you have to volunteer to work there.
Yeah, I just said I'm not working. You guys can do whatever you want. I'm not working.
I just want to buy the groceries. I don't care who's selling them.
Right.
The government,
but anyway.
whatever. I just want to buy them.
And then you go to a Whole Foods. That's great. Yeah.
I don't want to work there. I just want to buy it. It's like Dave Chappelle. I don't want to make Nikes. I just want to wear them.
The argument on that podcast, the Ezra podcast, was they were sort of native to emerging medias. Trump was native to X and Zohran to TikTok. But, the difference is that one relies on resentment and conflict and the other one's sort of empathy and inclusion. And so they're really different in the way that their message comes across. Well, that's how you
win. I don't totally know TikTok because I stay away from it. But isn't that how you win there? Alex, do you know? But and also, what do you think? Because I think a lot of people are giving him a lot of credit with his like sort of design sensibilities and just sort of.
Oh,
like,
well, the videos are good. His mother's is a noted filmmaker.
Yeah.
And the graphic design is good, Alex, huh? The color scheme, nice.
Right. Because I mean,
communists are always good. It's like
maybe we're downplaying. People are resonating with the message, and people are resonating with his plans. So I wouldn't want to say like, oh, he's just good at social media. I think what happens when somebody has a good platform and when it is rooted around optimism is that you can also attract, good people. He obviously has taste, but he's obviously surrounded himself with people who have taste. So like all his campaign stuff is well done. He's charismatic. He can, and I think the ability of a leader to gather a good team around them is really important, right? So we're seeing a lot of that. So I'm not surprised it like the execution is so good because I think people are really resonating with what this guy's saying. And I don't know all the details, but he's got the 3 pillars, right? He's got a good message, he's charismatic, and then he's got a great team around him executing around that. So and then you compare it to Cuomo. It's like I don't think Cuomo is like because he didn't have the right media strategy. It's like really. Like you have this young charismatic guy versus this other guy who's had some issues. Let's just put it that way. And we're like,
he's Italian. He's not a predator. He's just Italian.
That's offensive and more than
that was his defense. That was his defense. If people were misinterpreting his Italian sort of manners.
Yeah, no, it's like I know a lot of Italians that was like, don't drag us into this. Yeah, and I mean, so I mean, we're a podcast about media, so we're talking about that. But I also think that in this case, the entire pack, like it's much easier to market something that's appealing, right?
Well,
like it's much easier to market an iPhone than it is to market like this toilet brush.
But I think the way that I think also the way you break through is by having and maybe this is too obvious, but having a very simple and sharp message that, yes, is a little, quote unquote, what would have thought to be, quote unquote, extreme. When Trump said build the wall, that was extreme. It's like, give me a break. How are we going to build a wall that's 1,800 miles long? It's not going to work. There's all this, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? Build the wall. Build the wall. He just kept going back to it. And like that.
And it appeals to people's, it appeals to like people's sensibilities, like to a certain group's sensibilities, the same way we, build like city-owned grocery stores might have.
Which to Troy is very extreme, right? And I think the way that you break through in a lot of this stuff, and sometimes it ends up backfiring. For instance, defund the police was disastrous, I think, mostly because, yes, it got that sort of like shock value. Everyone knew like defund the police. Everyone heard about it. The problem was it was like too far. I mean, you see what's going on with the Israel-Gaza and this Bob Villain, like, punk band guy. Like a lot of this stuff is trying to create these, I think they kept calling it memetics. Like, I don't even know. It was just like they kept repeating it. Inject it into, the stream. And that is how you gather support. And I think we're just going to see more of that as what was Cuomo for? Like, did he have any sort of thing? Like, what was Jeb Bush
he's for making sure like rich people don't leave because they might pay a little bit higher taxes because everybody's
just a snappier slogan for that.
Every rich person leaves,
Alex,
New York when it gets a little bit more expensive.
You don't know you literally don't know what you're talking about. New Yorkers already pay among the highest taxes in the country.
Sure, great.
Right?
Yeah, it's one of the it's the greatest city in the world. You pay more. That's fine. I mean, we pay a lot in California too. Like move to Arkansas. Fine. Whatever.
We don't need to pay more taxes.
Tax burden in Florida is very reasonable.
We need to have a better run city. We don't need to pay more taxes, man.
Maybe you need both.
But in any case, let's move on because that was good. That was snappy. I don't want to get too far into the politics.
Thank you,
stuff.
Brian.
The other thing, on a cheerier note, Paramount, this Pusillanimous Paramount. I drip with contempt for these people. They cut a deal with Trump. They're going to pay. They're going to bribe him. There was a settlement of $16 million for a spurious lawsuit over
same as the Disney
60 minutes. I'm not doing straight facts here. A $16 million settlement on a spurious lawsuit that was holding up their merger deal with Skydance. It's a straight bribe. I can't believe this is happening. If this is not against the law, it needs to be against the law. And the fact that this is happening, to me, I'm not an alarmist. I do not have Trump derangement syndrome. It is just a full assault on the First Amendment. That is my take. Troy, tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, first, maybe we can start by talking about Diddy.
Okay.
No, I think you're right. I don't know. It seems to me that it's
Like, isn't this obvious? Like, I'm like, I don't
but
think there's
we
two
should
sides
peel
here.
it back and look at what the underlying, issue.
There isn't an
like,
underlying issue. It's a bribe to get through a merger. What am I missing?
Okay, so Trump sued for I can't remember, $8
$20 billion.
Trillion,
$20 billion, because CBS had doctored the clip that ultimately
Doctored. They
sort of-
edited.
Well, it was edited.
No, edited. It was an edit.
Vanya
It was a-
doctors this podcast
exactly.
like every week.
It was a normal edit.
We should call it like
call
Dr.
it like
Vanya.
this.
It was a normal edit to prevent a babbling candidate from looking bad on their program. That's what it was. I just want to say that I just think it's important to bring that up.
Yeah, I'm going to
Right.
sue for all the quotes that are cleaned up from Donald Trump because he sounds like an incoherent, blathering idiot. Like
Fair enough.
But the bottom line is, that's not what this is about. We all know this. Let's be grown-ups.
Yeah.
That's
agree
not
with
what
you.
this is about. Like, it's just insane to me that, like, I don't even honestly know how journalists can continue to work there. I would quit.
They are quitting.
They should. They shouldn't be in this business. They should go into a different business. Whatever.
PR.
Yeah, go into PR. Sure. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, just to explain it, the reason this likely happened is so that the sale of Paramount could go through, right? Which has been held up. That's what's being dangled right now.
That's the bribe.
Yeah.
Right.
It's fun times.
I mean, I don't go down the road of like, oh, this is a disturbing precedent for every single thing. This is truly a disturbing precedent to me. Like this is bad.
That's
the
what it
Wall
took.
Street Journal's editorial board is like up in arms about this. Like, I mean, that's how bad this is.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that have like any kind of Trump derangement syndrome. Although they have parted ways because I guess they have something of a spine. But I think it's just dangerous. So that's my
I think
take.
it's remarkable to reflect on the long arc of Trump's attack on media, where it started as this sort of innocuous accusations of fake news, and now has become complete destabilization and trust in the media. Some of it is probably warranted, but this is the outcome of that.
Is what I believe. And like that, this is
Power, Brian. It's just power.
Yeah, well, the only way you deal with power is by fighting back against it. So I don't think it's any surprise that Zohran Mamdani is successful right now. Because
You're going to see a lot of, I mean, like, I don't think like kind of the centrism, you know, like the way the Democrats are talking and kind of that relaxed attitude towards this stuff is working anymore. I think we're going to see a lot of, you know, very reactive, you know, politicians popping out of the woodwork.
Have you ever taken Revel? I don't think I think they're just in New York. So
I used to rent the scooters, Brian.
they started as a scooter company
yeah.
until they like realized that like literally nobody wants to wear a helmet that like 150 other people have worn. It was just a disgusting idea.
Was that the problem with that service?
I believe
It's
that was the
definitely
main
one of the
problem.
UX problems that you have to wear
Like,
a helmet.
Does
Like,
that gross you guys? Does that gross you out, Alex?
I don't know. I don't want lice.
yeah, that's infinitely worse than bowling shoes. That's like just no.
At least bowling shoes, some teenagers sprays them with something in between, right? Like, you know, there's nobody spraying
and then
the
inhales
helmet.
it out back.
You know, there's something wrong with me because I used to take Revels all the time, and I would pop that helmet right on. But you know,
But you don't have as much to lose as some of us, Troy.
Yeah, that's true. So they pivoted when they realized that this was not working. People were stealing the bikes and all these things. It was a complete disaster. But nobody gives the venture capital money back. And they were like, we're going to take on Uber because, you know, we're totally going to do that. Anyway, they have these blue cars and they're Teslas that they own and they rent to the drivers. And I got one to the airport yesterday.
so it's a different app. You called
It's a driver. It's a driver. It's not like a zip car or something.
No. It's a driver in an Uber.
So
They rent
why
the
did
car
you
to them.
decide to do this? To save a couple shekels, or what were you trying to do?
They're nicer cars, and they always, the business is going down. They give you 25% off like every single time. They're like 25% off for your next 4 rides, and it's like nicer. You just have to wait a little bit longer. Anyway, when you get into the car, the guy just went in. He goes, "I don't understand how you afford to live here." I was like, literally right here. I'm like, it's not like, and he was like, no, New York City. I'm like, well, you too. Like, and we started talking about like the prices of things, and it was like 5:30 in the morning. And this guy was like telling me he had moved here from Egypt, and he had restaurants that got closed during COVID, and he lost his business. And he's like, you don't know like how hard that is to go. He goes, I was the boss. I was running businesses. Now I'm driving you to the airport. I was like, oh God, this is getting like super awkward. But I understand that. And he was like telling me how like sometimes he pulls over to the side of the road and cries. And like, but he has to like do this because he's got 3 sons. And we're like, and like that kind of stuff, I feel like has not been like fully taken on by all of the establishment politicians. And it is why we got Donald Trump, and it's why that Zohran Mamdani is successful, because there is a lot of discontent out there, and like beyond the like communication strategies, that I just think it's inevitable that we're going to see even more of this.
Yeah, and I think especially like, I mean, we're talking about this like communication on the surface of having these things that hook people in. And maybe even if you kind of dig into it a little bit too much, it starts making less sense. But most people don't, you know? And so I think there's also maybe a turn in the culture around, you know, I was listening to a podcast where they were comparing George Clooney's wedding in Venice to Jeff Bezos's wedding in Venice, and how George Clooney's was, you know, welcomed versus Jeff Bezos, you know. And if you saw some of the kind of like the heat that wedding was getting online, and there's maybe this turn against, that is a very populist term, against kind of like the wealthy, the unaffordability of things, capitalism in general. And that's like a sentiment that's happening like across the board. And I feel like, you know, we're going to just see more and more of that. And hey, these people are often younger and they're way better at communicating. I mean, I think Trump's an anomaly. A lot of these people that are going to be way better at communicating to these folks and say, yeah, it sucks that you lost your restaurants and that now you have to be an Uber driver. And here's what I'm going to do about it.
Yeah, the one thing I have not been able to figure out around that is sort of wealth smugness that you see on like All In as an example. I mean, obviously manifested in, you know, $1,200 tequila, but not that. It's like the constant jokes about their private jets, their PJs, their, you know, $1 billion, you know, assets or whatever it is. It just feels so out of touch with me. Like, and maybe it resonates with an aspirational audience. I just think it's tacky.
Well, I think it's nearly, but I wonder if it's not dangerous, but I think, yeah, it's definitely out of touch. And I wonder if it's because of a lack of awareness. But if you saw the Bezos wedding, it's just like they're going full out. They're going full on. This is how we're going to be.
But I just don't understand it, Alex. Like, how do you decide you're the richest guy in the world, or 6th richest, whatever, you can do whatever you want. You can have a good time. Good for you. You made lots of money. You invented stuff. And then you have a suds party on your yacht and you like circulate all the photos, and it just feels
like with 4 people. But the thing I don't get as well is like all the celebrities that made, like, you know, like though these people have real friends is my first question. Secondly, I also feel that there's been a shift in the culture around like just the power of celebrity and the reverence around these celebrities. You know, there's still a lot of wealth porn and stuff like that on TikTok, but like, I just wonder if it's a lack of awareness, if it's like the echo chamber of being surrounded by yes men, or just like there and they know something you don't. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I would think that wealth provides you with, you know, privacy, and you know, the idea that you would flaunt your wealth on your, like in that way just feels so.
It's disgusting. I find it like repulsive.
Rich people want to be famous. Famous people want to be rich. Have you guys seen this Zohran Parak guy? I think he's a hero. He's an engineer in India who was holding down four or five jobs at a time at like startups. He got exposed on X, and now
Who exposed him?
Yeah, one of the Suhail Doshi, he's a co-founder of Mixpanel. He said that he's been preying on Y Combinator companies. I mean, wow.
Good for him.
No, he's a hero.
I mean, I get why it matters, but like hypothetically, why should it matter? If you had someone that was doing a great job and he was also doing a great job on 4 other companies, and you never got any reason to fire them, like what's the problem? Technically.
So I think he was outsourcing it. I think that's okay though. I don't know if I think he was just really good at the interviews. Supposedly he's really good at interviewing. And then he would just sort of delegate like tasks to others to do on his behalf. Seems, I don't know. It's just like basically he's got like a little agency business, which is a good segue. Let's talk about the agency business and the ad world.
Brilliant segue.
You know, there was a time when advertising was a glamorous profession. I feel like all the glamorous professions are now not glamorous. Like tech was never a glamorous profession. And now you got these guys making like their $300 million packages. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like there was always like fashion is a glamour profession. You know, advertising was something of a glamour
There was
profession.
a time when advertising was up there with being an attorney. Like it was one of the professional.
Is that a glamour profession?
Well, I think that in a place like New York City, being a high-end attorney or being an ad man was a title of distinction. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Oh, you don't think it?
What? That I don't think that like advertising is like, well, I mean, there's like professions which are like, you know, my son's a doctor, my son's a lawyer. And then there's just like the other sort of things. And that's like
my son's in advertising.
I would say architect.
I used to like it when my mother would say, my son is in computers.
No, that sounds better. Yeah. I would rank architects over advertising, but okay. But anyway, advertising was, you know, accorded a little bit of, you know, cultural juice. That's kind of gone away. I mean, you see this with, you know, the big IPG, Omnicom merger. You know, this is about downsizing this industry. These companies are going to continue to get compressed. I was talking to someone at one of them, and you know, he gave me well, what do you think about the future? That I gave him like a Troy response. I was like, compression. And then he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, I just went and talked to someone else because I didn't know what I meant. Troy, you were of the ad world for a time. Is it bleak?
It seems pretty bleak. I mean, I remember when I walked in, maybe I've told this story in the past. I think I had decided to move to Toronto. We were about to have our first child, and I had been working in media at a newspaper, and I needed to make more money. And I walked into an ad agency called Bickers and Benson, which was at the time like one of the big independents in Canada. And I thought, this place is amazing. There are people playing, you know, mini putt in the hallways. And I remember hanging out with the creative guys who, you know, they'd make one print ad every week for, you know, a Canadian bank. And they would debate the headline for like hours. No, that's no good. You know, I mean, it was just
nice. That sounds nice and cozy.
Yeah. You know, they'd have a nice.
What is wrong with that, Alex? You know, I all you people from Silicon Valley are always like saying, "Oh, I didn't
start in Silicon Valley. I was like, actually, Troy knows that I was hustling with a small agency, and I was better at making things than at business. So our agency was very productive. We all worked our asses off. But we were paying,
you were a low rate creative agency. That's why I like it.
We were getting paid.
You were like a corridor agency. Isn't that what they used to call them? Corridor agencies that got to sit out in the corridor when the main pitch came in. They were like, it
was talent arbitrage. Pick up the guy in Cyprus. He's like 3 times as creative as anybody you've ever worked with. He's an amazing guy. That's Alex. And get him for $80 an hour. It was awesome.
Yeah, you were like Ukrainian developer.
Exactly. Yeah, we were that. So I think there was a lot of waste of time. You know, even at my time at Airbnb, we had a lot of agencies walk in and out, and there's always talented people, but there's a lot of fat around these organizations and how they build and how they charge, you know.
Well, yeah, that I think has been like well known, but now the compression is really coming, right? Like, and I was just struck by that at Cannes. Like, you look at what's happening with VO3, and it's pretty obvious the direction it's going to go on the creative side. And then you look on the media side, and it's worse. I mean, the systems that Meta and Google are building, it's just name your objective, name who you're trying to reach. You give us like, and we're just going to take it.
I mean, listen, these were revered companies, TBWA Day, Andrew Robertson's BBDO, the mighty John Wren at Omnicom that everybody thought was the godfather. Ogilvy, who invented the craft, or largely invented it. I mean,
good, aren't
Wyden was considered to be the architect of modern Nike. These were like important companies, man. And now what do we have, right? We have basically WPP is on the brink of extinction. It was the biggest for a long time, and Mark Reed, their CEO, has just stepped down. Omnicom has always been kind of less, acquisitive, much more of the kind of organic growth player, had really good agency groups. They're now being forced to consolidate essentially in a $30 billion deal that'll give them probably over 100,000 employees with IPG. You've got Publicis, that's the sort of strong performer now that bought, who did they buy? Epsilon and Lotame, and they had a really strong technical services group in Sapient, and they've been winning lots of business. They run, Coke's North America business. They won, I think, what did they win recently? LinkedIn. They won Santander. They won Subway.
Congrats. So, usually when they win these big accounts, it means that congrats, you have negative margins.
Well, but really underneath of it all, essentially they're managed, the margins and the money come from the media, the buying side of the business, and increasingly having a platform to manage, data and performance on behalf of multinational clients across many markets. And then I looked at it and I was like, well, what's really happened to media spend over the last 20 years? And basically television used to be 60 to 70%. It's now, 2025, and digital's the rest. And increasingly all television looks like digital because people are buying it the same way. So the industry, any of them that are going to, thrive in the next generation will first do this consolidation thing, cut a bunch of costs, obviously, and try to find enough margin in the business such they can build data management and AI platforms to support their clients.
I mean, that's such a totally different bit. They're like, first of all, you mentioned Sapient. They're like a systems integrator, right? Like what the business that they're going into is nothing like the agency, but they're just trying to find a different business.
I
guess that's modern advertising.
It made me think about the acquisition this week of that soap company, Dr. Squatch.
Yeah.
$1.5 billion. It's a men's soap company. Unilever just purchased it.
They never ran a TV ad in their lives.
Well, they did actually run a Super Bowl ad, but other than that, they bottled up Sydney Sweeney's bathwater and put it in soap.
Oh, that did well.
It did really well, yeah. And so, they're influencer marketers, content marketers, and they manage almost everything themselves. The agency isn't a part of it. And I think that's what's going on. So,
for sure on the creative side. And it's also, as a creative, most of the folks I talk to that are still in agencies want to, kind of be in-house, right? Because that's like, so you're in-house at Meta or even at Airbnb, and rather than working at an agency, you work on a single client, you make more money. That stuff's gone. A lot of strategy roles have moved in there because, the world is moving so quickly that dealing with an agency feels like just like a little bit just more delayed to making decisions, and you can try stuff, and when you start making the calculations of how much money you used to spend on those agencies and say, well, we can build a small internal team that's entirely focused on us and they all want to work here anyway, why not, right?
Alex, one of the things that caught my eye this week was Jonathan Anderson's debut at Dior. And normally they would have the legions of PR people spreading the message out to all of, fashion media brands, and combined with a lot of advertising. You know what they did to promote their men's, women's, and couture show? They opened up the DMs to quote unquote close friends on Instagram, and they trickled out content in advance of the show and then used that as a mechanism to feed the influencers and sort of insider journalists. And that was their effectively CRM meets advertising run on a platform and administered largely internally by the team at Dior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a brand like that can, I mean, it has to be a fashion brand or something like that, right? You have to be incredibly creative to do that when the vast majority of products in the world aren't that, right? And so a lot of that kind of social media stuff and influencer stuff only works for a small category of products. And
right, but I would
happens to
challenge you
everything else?
there. Because that's why I brought up that Dr. Squatch thing, because it's soap for dudes, okay? But it's soap for dudes with super clever packaging, with Star Wars tie-ins, with SpongeBob, with Sydney Sweeney. So they've become an entertainment company.
I mean, look
but
at
they're really
Liquid
just they're P&G. Liquid Death
look
is
at Liquid
water.
Death, right? I mean, that's like how you build a brand now. It's not like bang people over the head with reach and frequency. And that's what these ad agencies are built for, an industrialized world that's gone. That's what they were built around.
For sure. No, I don't think there's any future for them. I couldn't, if I was starting a business today, which I did, but I wouldn't even understand where they can exist. I mean, even in the entirety of marketing has been upended so much that a lot of people are even trying to figure out what to do with internal teams.
But on the creative side, like, I don't understand, because I would always have thought like that agencies were like to creatives what like SaaS companies were to like tech talent, and that they were like kind of arbitraging it. Like, we're going to aggregate a bunch of like technology that said you're not going to get the developers, you're not going to have it, and we're going to have them, and we're going to create the software, and then you're just going to license it from us. And then in some ways, the companies couldn't attract creative people, so they were a holding area for creative people, because this was a way for creative people to have middle class plus like lifestyle while still being creative people. But if you're a creative person, now, why in the world would you go to an ad agency? Wouldn't you be like creating on your own? Wouldn't you be a creator? Like, why would you even be there?
Well, because you get a paycheck in healthcare and you have colleagues. You know, that's what people do.
You'd rather be, I think 9 out of 10 times, you'd rather be in-house. You know, I mean, the amount of creatives that are hired just within these tech, the tech companies here and hired out of agencies is tremendous.
Yeah, they can get, it's funny because like, you know, you saw this like drain of like top creative people going to like Google and Meta, where like nobody even know, like they're not getting the $300 million contracts, you know, like they're like bit players. And so you trade
but
you
get paid well. You get paid well.
No, you get paid well, but
you know.
Yes, but it's very different when you are the like the straw that stirs the drink inside an ad agency, and you're a creative person in a tech company. I mean, you're like the caterer. Like it's
yeah. I would say that it would usually go that you'd end up with more money, especially if you factored in equity and you picked the company right. But you would definitely get some sort of demotion, both like culturally and emotionally.
You're running to people like, what do you do here?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I'm the chief creative officer.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to AI destroying writing.
Great.
I think that, Trey, this is something that you wanted to discuss. We've talked about it a little bit, and I think this is showing up obviously most prominently in schools. Sam Altman has something that he says with, you know, that how young people use ChatGPT is totally different, and he's very biased, and how older generations do, and that young people use it as an operating system. And I think how they relate to words, and this is something Alex has been on about for some time as our resident early adopter, is, you know, very prominent in that way. I saw one study this is from a couple of years ago. I'm always amazed with like cursive writing, because having spent a few weeks in Europe, I realized that the future of cursive writing is only in tattoos in Europe. And apparently, like, very few young people can actually read cursive, not only write it. Like, I struggle with the French bistro chalkboard cursive, because that's a particular type of cursive. I don't know if you Can you write
That's
it,
how I
Alex?
learned how to write.
That's how you learned how to
Yeah.
write?
Yeah.
I can't really.
as a poor boy in a bistro.
Yeah. Unchopped.
It's a very particular type of cursive.
French cursive. Yeah.
Oh, is it French cursive?
That's how you have to learn how to write. That's how you learn how to write.
Oh, you were serious about that.
I was.
So you can write that way?
Yeah. And you had to learn with like an ink pen that was very specific.
A quill, yes.
Yeah, quill.
I think it's moving on to words. And, the using ChatGPT for like all kind of writing. I personally, again, I'm very biased. I think this is terrible, et cetera. But it also feels a little bit inevitable that words are also getting a little downgraded.
But surely you use ChatGPT to support your writing, right? Do you use it as an editor at all? Do you run your stuff through a ChatGPT thing?
Yeah, I'll use it for that. I will use it but not for like the actual like writing. No.
Yeah.
Well, you've made a life out of writing, Brian, and so you're different than most.
That's why I'm podcasting.
There was a feature in the New Yorker about this that basically there were quotes from a student saying, any type of writing in life, I use AI. And I was like, whoa, this is big. The whole thing is, I can't conceive of, I think the most important thing that you probably do as a professional is synthesize what you hear, right? And have to package it in a process of writing. Like that's what you do, whether it's an email or a memo or a strategic document. Like writing and thinking go together.
Yeah, they're synonymous. Usually, Alex is the exception, but this is about like every like smart person that I've known has been a good writer.
Yeah,
and I think that's related. People who cannot like write historically, I'm saying there are always going to be exceptions to this. I have always thought about it as like you can like talk and be a bullshitter. Like, I would love to see Trump's like actual like writing, like paragraphs, right? And then like, again, like he's got a particular type of intelligence, I guess.
That would be cool to see.
Are you saying I'm a bad writer? I'm sorry, I missed.
No, you're not a terrible writer. Actually,
I don't know about your writing. You don't write.
But I suspect that most of it is being out.
I write a weekly newsletter for
yeah,
my
but you're
company.
outsourcing.
But you're known for being anti-words. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not anti-words. I think that there
I misunderstood.
You're anti-time zone. That's for sure.
My hypothesis is that a lot of academics and a lot of journalists are by definition writers that are in love with the word. Therefore, a lot of the discourse around like writing and reading and what's acceptable is created by people who take it very seriously. And I think there's a bias there. I think that like with everything, we have different ways of consuming information. And I understand that like deep focus reading and writing is important for mental development, but it was also something that we didn't always have access to, right? Like didn't Socrates say like that writing as an invention would make people forgetful and stupid? Like we don't know what the repercussions are. I think that right now what's happening in universities, like across academia, et cetera, is that we're seeing this change happening very quickly. And we're seeing this technology come into direct conflict with the way people are rated, right? You read somebody's essay and you figure out whether you can become like a PhD or whatever. Like, and that's being all thrown, into trash in part because these tools are so good that they mask the inefficiencies that we have of like understanding people's intelligence outside of just like providing these written artifacts and sharing them with each other. I just don't have time to I don't sit down and
no need to be defensive, Alex.
But I read a lot. I read a lot all the time. I consume a lot of information. I process it.
Some of my best friends are books. Anyway, there was a study last month out of MIT, Your Brain on ChatGPT. It's part of an emerging oeuvre of these attempts it's very early, to pinpoint whether there is a cognitive cost to using these generative AI tools too much. I would think that at some point, at some level, of course there is. The same way that you should do like crossword puzzles to fend off Alzheimer's, but perhaps not. We will find out as we charge forward.
Well, back to you, Alex, because the French writing is going to come in handy for the next generation. I just had my philosopher professor friend here, and they're going to make people do oral exams and handwritten work.
Hell yeah. But I feel like there's going to be a lot of changes. Some of this stuff might actually be productive, but like with any technology, it's likely true. Maybe it's the same thing as the internet. Like, didn't somebody say that the internet made dumb people dumber and smart people smarter? Like, we thought that the internet would like completely democratize the access to information and everybody would become more educated. Instead, people spend 2 hours on the toilet watching TikToks. Like, of course, AI is going to have these downstream effects that are pretty bad for us because it's a shortcut. It's a shortcut to critical thinking. But at the same time, when I'm in a commute, I can turn on the AI and run through a complex problem and feel like I have like somebody I'm kind of going back and forth on, and I feel smarter. Maybe not. Maybe it is brain rot. Maybe I'm being
so
tricked.
it could be me, but like I see that there is a social cost to being sort of caught using AI for things.
Sure.
Like, I mean,
absolutely.
like when someone gives a speech, there's always like a joke. It's like, that wasn't ChatGPT. Like at the wedding I was at, like it was like we were joking about like which speech was ChatGPT. I think one of them was ChatGPT. We were trying to identify like how much
the person kept saying hyphen.
Yeah. Like, think about that. The ChatGPT has destroyed the M dash. And I know a lot of writers really, and it's already bad enough for us, but like, really, a lot of
I used to use M dashes a lot in my writing, and now
we're very
stopped.
into M dashes, breaks and thought. They're overused, yes, but like, it's a very nice and very handy and very all-in-one punctuation. And it's been ruined.
M dashes sound like I talk when I write because they keep jumping around. Yes, absolutely. And we should have a full episode on just like the brand of AI. It is definitely worse in certain industries than others. Like there's games being entirely blacklisted because parts of the assets were generated with AI, like really minor stuff. And so there's definitely a backlash of that, even though everybody uses it. It's kind of like porn, but it's like like there's public outrage. But if you ask people in private,
but it's like 40% of internet traffic.
Hey, Alex, is porn cool? Is it good?
Porn can be cool.
It's hard to say.
The other thing on AI, maybe a segue to that, is like, did you guys see? I mean, there was a case. I mean, with Meta and with the folks at Anthropic, and it's pretty much leaning that all the inputs are fair use as long as you don't pirate the goddamn.
Oh, that's a segue. That's a segue.
Yes.
Because earlier this week, I was at like the dawn. I think it was a celebration for the new internet. And it was at Cloudflare's headquarters, not headquarters, their offices in New York City. And it was weirdly, it started at 9 p.m. and it went to midnight on a Monday. That's kind of outrageous, if you ask me. But at midnight, a bunch of publishers, I shared this in the WhatsApp group. I was doing shoe leather reporting for you guys. I got a photo of a bunch of publishing executives huddled around a little red button.
Like who? Was Neil Bogle there?
Neil was not there. He sent Tori, and John Roberts was there from.
Like anybody from Conde there?
I don't know. No. I didn't see anyone from Conde.
So was a bunch of like writing nerds in a room pressing a button? What was that about?
Yeah. They pressed the no robot button.
Yeah. So Cloudflare is a CDN. Okay. And
I know Cloudflare. I'm a customer.
Matthew Prince came to the PVA, the CEO came to the PVA holiday extravaganza. And so we sort of got a preview of this.
So Cloudflare manages a lot of kind of the interface between traffic between your website and people visiting your website.
They're a choke point. I mean, they're not but they are a choke point. And the idea is they're usually used to like fend off malicious characters. Yeah. And they're saying, hey, this is another malicious character. Our business is tied to websites. This is going to destroy the economic incentives for this. And we see the data, and we are going to allow our customers to go default off for the bots, and then basically whitelist bots that are allowed to be in. And the idea is that this will provide the leverage to publishers in order to extract payments in some future marketplace for crawling their sites. Pay-per-crawl.
Yeah. Finally, microtransactions in publishing.
Charge the bots.
It's going to work.
It had a bit of a populist feel for being on the 88th floor of the World Trade Center 1 in New York. But that this was a moment for publishers to fight back. I mean, publishers have basically been sort of lambs at the slaughter at this point. They've been like groveling for a few little deals and only a couple of them have gotten, and they've been whining about how unfair it is. Few have taken the legal route, probably with good sense, because one, they're going to get outspent. They don't have the resources. And two, as you said, this fair use argument looks like it's going to go through. I mean, the courts ruled in this Anthropic case that they took copyrighted books, they scanned them, and that was fine, fair use. They only got dinged because they took a freaking shortcut, which is kind of hilarious.
Yeah, they downloaded pirated books.
They couldn't even do it. It was like, you could have easily done it illegal with it. It was like,
there are some complications about, like, they had to get the physical copies. So it was fine to get the physical copies of the book, tear the kind of covers off.
Put the work in. You want to steal the shit? Put the work in.
Guys, let's back up a little
It's not
bit
stealing now.
So I wonder how many times, there will be deals cut between AI companies and people that provide real reporting up to the minute news. Other AI companies will have relationships with coveted data sets like YouTube, like X, like Reddit, that provide a lot of the sort of substrate that feeds the models. At this point, much of what many publishers have created, whether that's a kind of recipe database or a lot of evergreen content, has already been slurped. And
no. Neil Fogel will tell you that their blueberry muffin is a special blueberry muffin.
No. But Neil Vogel, actually, I took a lot of shit this week when I went to London because they said never have Neil
my
Vogel.
Podcast we did?
They said, they confuse rebooting with
Don't
PDM.
bring me in. I mean,
they're like, what's up with Neil Vogel's on every podcast you
I'm
guys
dealing
have?
with a war on words. I mean, like, I got a lot going on right now.
Let me finish my point. A lot of what people want is non-commercial data, like stuff like, I want to know how my Macintosh amp functions or whatever. And all of those companies, all of that information, all of the stuff in Wikipedia, all the stuff from academia will be provided as a means of moving knowledge or moving ahead commercial interests or human knowledge. And so there's a little tiny lane here, a little tiny lane of New York City publishers like that are like, stay out, bots. And we're going to create a marketplace. It's naive.
It's like popping open an umbrella to avoid the nuclear fallout. I've been watching the legal stuff very carefully because that fair use argument is, we don't know exactly, what people can do with terms of service, on their digital products, etc. But information and the written word specifically is so leaky, guys. It's like, even if you're a news organization and you say a thing, then that thing you said is going to be clipped and put into Twitter right away. And then it's fair use again. You know what I mean? So it's very hard with the written word to keep it contained in any way.
That stinks.
It does stink, right? Brian, this is why you should be doing more podcasts with us. Right? We're entertainment. I like the rebooting stuff, but I think this is the Beatles.
It's intellectual property. Yeah. Okay, so you guys are very negative on this. But what do publishers do then? Like, what would you like? I don't understand. Like, if you can't fight back, what is it? Just like
build a really good product. That people pay for. No, I'm sorry.
Now, are we going even further down the naive? Like,
it has to be. I think people will pay for stuff that they find valuable. I think that protecting value in something that has just been made zero, like, I think just like, sure, like protect your inputs and outputs as much as you can. Press the red button. It's actually, the Cloudflare thing isn't a terrible idea, but I think that at the end of the day, like, you need to look at it's a new world, and this is where I agree with Neil Fogel, is like, if you build something good, people will end up, paying for it. However, it'll likely be very different to what you're doing today.
The other thing that AB would say is that the toll from the aggregators to the AI aggregator will be de minimis.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem. Because Matthew Prince, he made the point. He said these companies want to make these deals. He said this is what he said. Like, he said they get it, that like they don't want they don't want to go first. Now, what he didn't say was like how they would value that quote unquote data, because they just see data. Okay. And like, this is the point with, my stuff, like my precious IP. It's like, yeah, data.
What stops an AI company right now of hiring like 6 people to act as a clipping service that reads every one of these things and rewrites it, not verbatim, just rewrites the news? Like what stops them? Like nothing. And I know that this is glib, but like I think that the currency of the written word, like, people used to pay money to go watch a train go by, like, and then we had to adjust to create like new reasons for people to go to the movie theater, right? Like, because they would record a horse or they would record a train or they would do something like that. And then now we have IMAX and shit like that. And now people are losing interest in that. So people are going to start to build new products. It's happening all across media, guys. It's happening all across media. And trying to protect your blueberry muffin recipe and saying everything's fine is likely, I mean.
All right, Alex. That was great. I'm so glad.
I'll stop here.
No, you're right.
Okay, all right.
But you know what, Troy? I mean, the good thing for you is that I think there's going to be lots of like brands in decline that value can be juiced out of for the next 3 years. Like just
juicing the value out of
old
brands.
Like, turn Vogue. Why don't you turn Vogue into a soap brand and you just put Charlize Theron's like bathwater in it? You could just like do whatever. Just do it for different age groups.
Content harvesting group.
Content harvesting group. That's it.
Should we move to good product, guys?
Let's move to good product.
I mean, I would start. I mean, I'm curious what you have on the docket for, it's July 4th. I had an early celebration. Much to my wife's chagrin, my philosopher friend I'd say he values quantity over quality sometimes. He came into my house with a piece of meat big enough that he had to put it on his shoulder.
Oh, wow.
Some Flintstone shit.
It was Costco Flintstones brisket, I think was the brand. TM.
That was a tomahawk steak.
Enormous brisket. And he said, you never use your green egg. I need to get up tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I need you to show me where all the stuff is. And I'm going to cook this thing for 12 hours. And we did it. And so we made, brisket is the sort of like lower chest or breast area of the cow, and it has a lot of like muscle in it, right? So you got to cook it forever. There's this part called the point and the part called the flat, and they're very marbly and they get nice and oily. And we, and I don't know if you have a green egg, but it's, what is it called? A Kamado style grill?
It's a Kamado grill.
Kamado grill.
Yeah, Kamado.
Yeah. So it has heat retention and, moisture control, and
it's a totem of upper middle class, middle-aged life.
I was thinking of getting one sort of.
Yeah, so I could manage the heat on it like to a kind of 240 to 260 range perfectly, just by like adjusting the amount of air moving through it.
If you're a man, like you just all of a sudden you find yourself into large format meats. Like you just find yourself doing that. Like you don't seek it out; it finds you.
Sure. But we had some nice pairings too. We cut the black ends off it and put it into bush beans, those nice bush beans, canned beans. We did, garlicky green beans and potato and artichoke salad. It was a beautiful meal. It was a great product.
Sounds delicious. I'm hungry actually. It's 12:15 here. I need to go eat something. So it's so I have a hard stop for my stomach.
I used to like to get drunk more, but now I can't do it anymore. It really shuts me down. I don't know if you guys are feeling that in your old age, but like
I stopped drinking. I don't drink anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
over here, people have switched drinking for like lower doses of mushrooms, which gives you kind of like a little bit of a drunk euphoria with none of the side effects. Seems to me.
I think that's a change that's going to stick. I think that's change is good. I think the alcohol companies are on the pathway of the cigarette companies.
Is there a company that sells those like managed doses of mushrooms?
It's interesting because I don't think it's entirely legal, but you can buy them anywhere, and they've got little brands, and they've got there's like even
not all of us listen.
Well, here. You can also join a church apparently and get them. I think.
What church is that, Alex?
I don't know. There's a church in Oakland that you can join.
Oh, really?
Apparently. So,
Wow.
All right.
That tax money is worth it over there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's it for this episode of People versus Algorithms, where each week we uncover patterns shaping media, culture, and technology. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Vanya Arsenov. She always makes us a little clearer and more understandable, and we appreciate her very, very much. If you're enjoying these conversations, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It helps us get the word out and keeps our community growing. Remember, you can find People vs. Algorithms on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and now on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
All right, guys. This is a good one. It's for July 4th. Happy birthday, America.
Happy birthday! You're doing great,
wait.
America. You're doing great.
What about Happy Birthday Canada, July 1st? Often overlooked.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Canada.
Congrats.
You did it first.